Yo, you know what time it is. It's your boy Trevor David Jones, back up at it. And as you can see in the title, we have the top 10 comic books of all time in today's TDJ ranks. I'm really excited about this. In Imaginist Culture, yes, it's Imaginist Culture now. We're not doing the nerd culture no more. I never liked that term anyway. And as I said in a previous video, I was gonna rename it, so today's the day. Imaginist Culture. Everyone has their specific route. You have gamers, anime, things like that. My particular route is comic books. It blossoms out from that. Of course, I'm very into video games, anime, so on and so forth. But the root is comic books for me. So today I'm doing the top 10 comic books of all time. And additionally, this list can serve as the top 10 comic books to acquire if you're looking to get into comic books. This is a great place to start. These are the 10 best. So that being said, these are the top 10 comic books of all time. So let's jump right in. Number 10, Wolverine Origin, 2001. There are a lot of versions out there, so you got to make sure you get the right one. Now, back when this came out, when I was about 13 or 14 years old, you can't overstate the degree to which Wolverine was a mystery. This was within my lifetime. Throughout all the comic books, the TV shows, everything else, video games, the actual origin of Wolverine was not known during my lifetime. This character came out in like the 70s. So we used to have this magazine called Wizard Magazine. Y'all look that up. That's way beyond the pale for a lot of y'all. So Wizard Magazine, and when they finally said Wolverine's origin is being revealed in comic book form, it was a true revelation. It didn't even seem real. We were like, what? Like, we know about Weapon X, Adamantium. Nah. This comic actually revealed his origin, and it was gripping, to say the least. The artwork, Andy Kubert, it was a revelation. It was amazing just because it told what happened, where Wolverine actually came from. We know this dude is like 200 years old. Like, we know these facts, these little tidbits, but it literally told the story of his origin, panel for panel, from when he was a baby. Yo, it's a must-read comic. It would be a must-read comic even if it just revealed his origin, because you want to know it. The comic is one of the best comics of all time. It's just dope. Super well written, beautiful artwork, like I said, the pacing, the action, everything about it. It is a must-read for any comic book fan, and it comes in at number 10 on my list of the greatest comics of all time. So make sure you pick that up. Number 9, moving on up the list. We got some good ones here, some bangers. Okay. Superman Red Son. Superman Red Son. A real classic. Now, I remember when Superman Red Son came out, or when I read it, I was at first a little scared, maybe even a little upset. I'm like, Superman, Russia, like you associate Superman with the USA, and I'm from America, of course. So I was like, what is this going to be? It's going to be one of the best comic books you've ever read. It is just so dope, man. So the premise is, the rocket that carried Superman from Krypton lands in Russia, or like the outskirts of Ukraine, actually, instead of Kansas, instead of the U.S. And what proceeds to happen is one of the best things ever put on the page. Superman, he still grows up to essentially be like a good character. It's just in his heart. It's in Kal-El. But the way it plays out against the Soviet backdrop, the introduction of characters like Batman, Wonder Woman, later on the Green Lantern, and one of the craziest and most interesting characters in the whole thing, Lex Luthor himself, insane. Also, Brainiac plays a pivotal role in this book. Yeah, man, you got to get on Superman Red Son. It's one of the best Superman stories ever told. And as I've said in my top 10 fictional characters videos, Superman isn't even necessarily, growing up, he wasn't even on my top list of favorite characters. I might have disliked him a little bit, but he's on my top 10 list of fictional characters as I've gone into adulthood. Superman's dope, man. It's super strong, it's Superman. But back when I wasn't even the biggest Superman fan, this comic struck to me as like, it's just insane. It's a must-read. Number 9 of my greatest comic books of all time. Number 8, Final Crisis. We got a lot of DC on here. DC, growing up, I read mostly DC, but that's beside the point. Final Crisis. DC's had a lot of crises over time. You got Crisis on Infinite Earth, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis. There's a lot of crises. That's how they do things. And it can be easy, you think that they're it gets diluted. You're like, is this really that good? Nah. They're all pretty good, actually. But anyways, Final Crisis itself, it's the only Crisis I have on here, and it's one of the best comic books of all time. Man, they broke their foot off in that one. Final Crisis is just crazy. And it gets a lot of flack because it's quote-unquote a little weird, a little different. It is. But aside from that, the writing, the themes, the artwork. This is Final Crisis, man. My voice cracked. It has you gripped from beginning to end. So Darkseid, through a battle with the new gods, he's finally approaching his death. But since Darkseid is not really mortal or like, a normal being, he's definitely not a human. His death carries a lot of consequences with it. It actually ends up forming a singularity, like a black hole, and is dragging part of reality along with it, just by him ceasing to exist. Crazy. But yeah, Darkseid, he's not a human. He's like a different type of being. So as a part of his death, he ends up being incarnated into a human being on Earth, along with all the other evil gods. And they slowly come to consciousness and realize where they are. But as Darkseid, they're evil. They're still going along with their evil plots. So the story follows the heroes slowly finding out what's going on and eventually, mounting an offense to stop them. Man, this comic is crazy. It's just got some insane moments, man. It's got insane moments. This is one of the... Now I'm moving to the list. I don't want to start spoiling too much, even though this came out a while ago, but I don't want to spoil too much. You got Batman, in my opinion... No, Batman in one of his dopest moments, literally, of all time, that shows, like, why he is Batman. You've got, they showed why the Flashes are so OP. They're just OP. The Flash, again, on my top 10 fictional character list of all time. The three Justice League members on that list are Superman, the Flash, and Batman. But at any rate, Flash is... Nah, I almost put him up there with Superman, man. Like, the Flash is not a joke. So they show why the Flashes are so OP. Bro, Superman himself has multiple moments to shine in this comic. The Book of Infinite Pages, the Thought Robot, Cosmic Armor Superman. Come on, man. Nah. Yeah, Final Crisis is just too OP. And it's crazy because it's unlike probably anything you've ever read, so every panel is a surprise because you don't know the story, but also because it's just different than really anything else. Oh yeah, it's a must read. Yeah, Final Crisis. Of all the crises, it's the only one I have on this list. It's just great. And it's a classic, really, is what it is. So go check that out. Final Crisis, an easy entry for number 8 on my list of best comics of all time. Number 7, Kingdom Come. A lot of DC on here. A lot of DC. DC's got some good stuff. Kingdom Come. The artwork is by Alex Ross, so you already know it's on another level. Even if the story was whack, which it's not, you could look at every panel and just be like, hypnotized just by, bless you, what's going on in the page. But put that to the side. So include that. You've got Alex Ross's artwork. Then you get to the story itself. It's just crazy. I read Kingdom Come again when I was like a child, an early teenager. I think I was like 11 years old or something. So I read the story, and I think I read it twice when I was a kid. And I saw it, but it didn't like make it through. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot going on. Later on, I read the story, and it's very interesting. The thing about Kingdom Come is it takes place in like a dystopian future where it's like, okay, the heroes are coming to terms with, I guess, their own mortality, except for Superman, who's essentially immortal, and just like a changing world. So the premise of Kingdom Come is this. There's this new hero. He's not really a hero. He looks, like a demon pretty much. Magog, who he's like, your old heroes, your ways are whack. No one wants that anymore. To the point where he actually kills the Joker when he's being, taken to a sentencing. He breaks up the convoy and kills the Joker. That changes everything. People are like, oh yeah, this guy's really about business, blah, blah, blah. So the old superheroes go into retirement. All of them. Batman, Superman himself, they all go into retirement. It's a new world order, so to speak. Everyone likes the way Magog does things, and it's like, okay, things are different now. So all these new superheroes roll up who are, almost like all of them are like anti-heroes. And it's like this for a long time. Superman's got the gray hair. Batman is like, has a brace. He can't even really move around too much. This was like the status quo for quite a while. Well, it all comes to a head when Magog decides to attack Parasite, an underrated villain, really. He's kind of getting up to OP status. He decides to attack him. It goes awry. This Parasite, he's, pretty powerful. And during the course of the battle, Captain Atom is present, and he ends up getting ripped open accidentally. This causes a nuclear blast that that vaporizes, like irradiates like a large part of America. At this point, Wonder Woman approaches Superman and she's like, yo, we need to come out of retirement. Stuff done popped off. And that leads to the rest of the comic. So it's just a great comic, man. Like I said, it really captures a lot of themes of the future versus the past. Right versus wrong. You've got some great standoffs between Batman and Superman in there, ideologically. You've got standoffs between Superman and some other characters that I don't want to like ruin. I don't want to spoil it, because seeing it on the page for yourself is just, it's like a grand moment. But it has some insane stuff in it. Kingdom Come is just a classic. Again, if it were just Alex Ross's artwork on the page, it would be a classic just because of that. But the story itself is insane. Make you think a little bit. And it's a must read, an easy number 7 for the top 10 comic books of all time. Number 6, rounding out the top 5, or the beginning 5. Civil War, Marvel. We haven't had any Marvel since number 10. Civil War is legendary. It's legendary. I mean, it's topped Wolverine Origins, Superman Red Son, Final Crisis, and Kingdom Come. Now you got Civil War. Civil War has become kind of a controversial comic in today's time, because some people consider it a whack. They're like, it didn't make much sense, not that much happened in it. Man, I do not know what they were reading. I really don't. Civil War is a timeless classic. I remember when I was reading it, this was back in 2007, getting each issue week to week, like reading it as it came out, and like the attached, like the partnered issues from different comics. It was just crazy. I mean, they had Spider-Man's unmasking on like the national news, like NBC, in the real world. You know what I mean? It was a big time comic. So Civil War, if you've seen the Marvel movies, you're familiar with the plot. There's something called the Superhero Registration Act, which comes into effect. The impetus was a little bit different in the movies. It actually, weirdly, still involved an explosion, and I'm just realizing that now as I'm talking about it. But in the comic books, a superhero named Nitro exploded outside of Scranton, New Jersey, I believe was the town it was. And that explosion, which killed some civilians, started a cascade of events that affected the Marvel Universe, has affected it until this very day. What am I filming this? November 23rd, 2022. It changed everything. And shout out to Marvel. That's why Civil War was so dope, because they changed the status quo. Because comics have a reputation for staying the same, basically forever. No. It changed everything till this moment. So Civil War, it pops off from there. You have the Superhero Registration Act. So basically there are two sides. One is like, superheroes don't need to be registered by the government. They need to have the leeway to do whatever they need to do. They're superheroes. They decide kind of in the moment what's right and wrong. If the government gets too involved, things are going to go downhill from there. So superheroes need their autonomy. The other side was like, no, clearly you didn't see the footage on TV of Nitro exploding. We need some sanctions. We need some stuff going on to make sure this doesn't happen again. So just like the movies, or the movies just like the comics, the two opposing sides were led by Iron Man and Captain America. And this struggle, man, it just led to some crazy stuff. I mean, the comic has so many moments. Now as we're moving up the list, I really don't want to spoil anything, because if you haven't read these comics, you want these moments to be a surprise. Again, Spider-Man unmasking, but that was on the news and our reality. So, you might have already known about that. Civil War is crazy. And it changed everything. I'm not even going to say what side came out on top. I want that to be a surprise. But it's just, to all the people who were like, it wasn't that good, or, this or that, nah. Don't let Civil War, go read that comic. It's one of the best comics of all time. I'd have to make another list to think of what Marvel's best comic books, especially events or like graphic novels, were of all time. You got Dark Phoenix, you got Spider-Man, the OG Gwen Stacy. You got some other stuff in there, but Civil War is top 3 for sure. I don't even have to really think about that. It's an easy top 3. It's just too good, and it was too impactful. Shout out Marvel for changing the status quo. Go read that. The cover stuck in my mind, the white cover, the red Civil War letters. Beautiful. Yeah. Top 10 comics of all time. Check that out. Number 5. Top 5. Get into the heavy hitters. All these are heavy hitters, though. Okay. Sin City. Now, a lot of these comics, y'all are probably familiar with if you're watching this video. If you're new to comics, you probably heard of these passingly from the movies. Many of these have been adapted into films. So, and a few of them are pretty good. They're not bad at all. Sin City, people probably think of it as a film. It's a dope comic book is what it is. It's insane. Yeah. Now, Sin City I also read as a child or a young and early teenager. Maybe shouldn't even been reading it, but I did. And it was crazy. Done by Frank Miller. Yeah, Frank Miller. My favorite comic book personality, writer, editor, artist, whatever, of all time. Frank Miller. Who you gonna put above Frank Miller? Now, when people think of Sin City, they're thinking usually of Volume 1, which consists of 4 yarns, so like different stories that, are interrelated in some way, shape, or form. The Hard Goodbye, A Dame to Kill For, The Big Fat Kill, and That Yellow Bastard. These are the 4 I read. There's a Volume 2, and they're actually more Sin City stories, but Volume 1 is what most people are talking about when they say Sin City, and that's the one I've read. So I've read all 4 of these stories. Just OP. The mood, the stark black and white artwork, except for like occasional color. And as an adult, I still don't like things really in black and white to this day. Just don't. Never did. Didn't like it as a kid. So I'm like, oh, this comic's in black and white. Am I going to like this? Yes. Yes, you are. It's insane. The grittiness, again, the mood, the artwork itself, the emotion, the action. Sin City's a great action comic. No real superheroes, but it's got people straight up squabbing, bro. Squabbing. Marv, I believe played by Mickey Rourke in the movies. I'll look that up. But yeah, Marv, great character. Yeah, Sin City's just a must read. It takes a genre that most people don't think about, like noir or like, film noir or like detective noir. Makes it modern within my lifetime. It just makes it dope. Sin City's legit. Out of the 4 of these, my favorite would probably be The Hard Goodbye, the first one. That's when Marv... Actually, I don't want to reveal too much of the story. Great story. Or That Yellow Bastard. Just because it's like... Y'all know I don't like scary stuff, but it's just scary enough to where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And That Yellow Bastard, I'm not going to tell you who he is. This dude was like 9-year invulnerable. For a comic with no superpowers, this dude was like, you couldn't do nothing to him. I'm like, what is going on? So he himself was painted in yellow. The rest of the comic was in black and white. Except for some blood was painted in red. Just so artistic, man. OP. Visionary. Highly recommended. Yeah, Sin City is a great opener, a necessary opener to the top 5 comic books of all time on this list. All right. Climbing on up. Number 4, V for Vendetta. Whew. Yeah. Like I said, once we get to this point, a lot of these are going to be familiar because of the films. They were so good that they had to be adapted into films. Are all top 5 of these films? Not quite, but pretty good amount. Yeah. V for Vendetta almost, it's like, what do I need to say more about it? Again, the movie, this could have gone on my top 10 films of all time. Great film. You got Padme Amidala in there holding it down. The Guy Fawkes mask. I need to look up who played V, actually. Just ridiculous. Great movie, the effects with the knives. But the comic itself, that's where it all started. It's a dystopian future, like a few of these are. Actually, an alternate, a nuclear future, like a few of these are. And yeah, it just pops off. Britain has been overtaken by like a fascist corporation type government, and V has taken it upon himself to shut it down. Oh, man. Of all of these, to me personally, V for Vendetta is a little dialogue heavy. There's a lot of talking in it. But overall, it doesn't take away from the comic. It's number 4 on my list. It's just enthralling. And especially to read it, like when it came out, because when I was a child, it had already come out, years before. But, I imagine at that time it must have been like harrowing, like scary. Like, man, this is crazy. Like, what are they trying to tell us here? It's just great. V, another character, like kind of has superpowers. He's definitely got a leg up over other people. They found out in the comic, like, oh, this dude is mortal. So yeah. It's a classic. It's a classic. Read V for Vendetta. A little thick, a lot of talking, but definitely deserving of its number 4 spot on my list. Number 3, now onto the podium. The heavy hitters of the heavy hitters. All-Star Superman. Whew. Yeah. If I read All-Star Superman right now, I might start tearing up. I actually have that comic. That's in my collection. It's just crazy. Again, Superman, growing up, was not my favorite character. When I got into adulthood, I actually started liking him. And I read this when I was like early 20s, I think, like college age. Quickly became one of my favorite comics of all time. And I would say one of the best comics of all time. you can go look up the reviews on All-Star Superman. Critics love it, raving about it. It's just it's a highly loved comic that a lot of you may not have even heard about. Maybe even some comic book readers. The art is done by Frank Quietly, so you know it's on fleek. Every single panel is a joy to look at. It's just beautiful. Frank Quietly did New X-Men. I remember when that came out, early 2000s. I was like, man, this art is just dope, futuristic. Same thing with All-Star Superman. Even a little better, actually, because it came out after New X-Men. More refined. Every single panel, every single stroke, every single line stroke is gorgeous. And I'm not just saying that. Read the comic. It's just great. The colors, it's just awesome. So the basic plot is there's a exploratory mission to the sun. So take that for what you will. And Superman's a part of it, naturally. So when he gets there, he develops a new power. I'm not going to reveal that because that's a pretty cool part of the story. He ends up being negatively affected by being that close to the sun inside of it for, whatever period of time. And the plot continues from there. So with his limited amount of time to live, we're talking about Superman, I'm pretty sure this dude's immortal. He starts doing just some real Superman type stuff. I don't want to get too much into it, but this book shows you how far away Superman is just from anything else or anybody else. Yeah, Kryptonians are just OP, man. They really are. I mean, they've got a part where I'm going to just reveal one thing because it's just dope. He's in the Fortress of Solitude, which is like the Fortress of Miracles. He should rename it. And just literally with an anvil and hammer, like a person would be making a sword, is making many suns, making stars. He can condense atoms down into nuclear fusion just because he's that strong. He didn't have no gear on, no machine, with his arms, with the biceps. So he's bang, making these mini suns and feeding them to a sun eater, this squid-like, beast that he has just yoked up chilling in his Fortress of Solitude, aka Fortress of Miracles. And it's just and the story doesn't go out of its way to say oh, you need to be looking at this part, or this is this is prime Superman. It's just, it puts it all out there and lets you take from it, what you need to take from it. And you read that and you're just is this man really forging suns right now on a anvil? He's making some armor like a human would make? Crazy. And the book is full of moments like that. Absolutely full. I don't want to reveal too much. I don't. It's just, yeah. And it's very emotional too, the whole story is. It's just great. And another standout character of the book is Lex Luthor himself. I don't want to get too far into that. But yeah, All-Star Superman. It's just a Superman story for the ages. It's my highest rated Superman story on this list, so it might be the best Superman of all time, Superman story. I could look into some other ones, but yeah, it's a very positive story. It's very uplifting. That's another great part of it. So yeah, I can't recommend All-Star Superman enough. Easy entry, starting off the podium, number 3 comic book of all time. Number 2, Watchmen. Most people could put Watchmen at number 1. You could. I wouldn't fight him too much. Nah, I would. Yeah, Watchmen, though, is a necessary number 2 spot on this list. I remember reading the Watchmen. This was in my early 20s. I remember where I got the book, and I remember sitting down and reading it. It was multiple hundreds. It's 300 pages long? I'll look it up. It took me 2 months to read Watchmen. I usually read comics in a couple days, matter of weeks, maximum. It took me a couple months, and I wasn't playing around reading. That is a thick book. It's big. Oh man, but every single page. Wow. Now again, Watchmen, now when we get into Watchmen, we're moving on to literary history. This is one of the best things ever written, period. So you probably heard about this in the news or something. This is the Watchmen we're talking about. And many of these comic books, especially those in the top 5, they've been immortalized in film form. Bless you. So you've probably seen the movie. The movie's great. But that comic, all time. The plot kicks off when Comedian is mysteriously thrown out of a window. So like any entry on this list, maybe even real life, one single event, one single thing, one cat that got let out of the bag forms a cascade of events that just barrels into the future. And that's what happens with Watchmen. Comedian getting thrown out that window and laying on the ground with the chalk outline, that started everything. Now Rorschach's on the case. What is this? Who would hunt down Comedian? Is someone killing superheroes? And the whole comic just barrels off from there. Yeah, Watchmen is For a comic book with basically only one superhero, arguably two, it's just like, it's just too good. And I love superhero comics. I love the powers, muscles, flying, all that stuff. It's just dope. But like, there's not too much of that in here. There's not too much, except for, of course, Dr. Manhattan, But aside from that, it's supposed to be grounded. Nah, it's as engaging, as exciting as any superhero comic ever written. And that's before even getting to Dr. Manhattan, an omnipotent type being. Literally no one else has superpowers, arguably Ozymandias. He's like smart, but he's like way out there kind of smart. He might have a little metagene in his genetics. But other than that, it's really just Dr. Manhattan, who's like Silver Surfer mixed with some little bit of Galactus. And he's got some Molecule Man. He's got some Owen Reese going on. Yeah, man, Dr. Manhattan, it's almost worth reading just for him alone. But that's not even fair because it's worth reading. It's almost worth reading for Rorschach alone. For Rorschach. So, yeah, nah. Yeah, Watchmen, unmistakable, the yellow cover. It's... Go pick that up right now. It's won multiple awards. Every single page is engaging. You find out the deeper mystery of the heroes. You find out what's going on. I don't want to get into the ending or really any spoilers. It's just awesome. Yeah, go pick up Watchmen, number 2 comic book of all time. And number 1, when we get to number 1, I can pretty much put the list up. Nah, I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it because I got some notes on here. Number 1, deservedly so, The Dark Knight Returns. For a long time, The Dark Knight Returns was my favorite book ever written. Anything put into print. Over any book with just words in it, text. No. Dark Knight Returns was above all of that. As time has gone on, I found some books that I would actually put above it. I actually put those 4 books in my link in my description in every video. 4 books everyone should own. All 4 of those are. That's a whole different story for a whole different day. But still, to the top comic book is The Dark Knight Returns. Y'all noticing a Batman theme here? Okay. This book, when I was 16 and I read it, I think a friend gave it to me. This is one of the rare things on this list. I'm not quite sure how I came about it. Usually I can remember every movie, where I was, who I saw it with, most of these books, where I got it from, where I was sitting when I read it. But where did I get The Dark Knight Returns? I can't even quite remember. And I was a teenager. Doesn't matter. It was insane. I was just about in tears. A 16-year-old young adult male in tears. Not because any part of it is particularly sad, just because it's so good and the artwork is so good. Tearing up. Transformative, okay? The book opens up with Bruce Wayne. He actually went into retirement after Jason Todd's death. It tore him up. It did in the main story, but this one, he put the cape up for a long time, 20 years or so, if not longer. So crime, of course, in the absence of Batman, has run rampant in Gotham. But not just regular crime. There's this group of criminals called the Mutants. They dress kind of like punk rockers. This was in the late 80s, the mid 80s when this comic was made. And they're taking over the city. Even still with all that going on, Batman was yo, I'm just living my life. I'm done with the superhero thing. Too much crazy stuff happened. I'm over it. So one night, things go over the edge, and he decides he's had enough of the mutant threat. So it's time for Batman to actually come out of retirement after 2 decades. And the comic just barrels off from there. Man, this comic is insane, man. It just has so many moments, and it's just too good. Y'all see me getting freezing because it's crazy. One of the key things is when Batman wakes up and re-becomes Batman, still 55 years old, swole AF. This man is still yoked up, okay? So still swole. He's in the mirror. He just wakes up and his beard is gone. Because he had a beard, he's been living the rich man life. Also pseudo adrenaline junkie life, but the rich person life. Has a little beard going on. He's chilling. He wakes up and looks in the mirror. He's where's my beard? The implication of which being he shaved his beard off while he was asleep or in a blacked out state. When I was 16, I remember putting that comic and just busting out laughing so loud. Who's writing this stuff? This man woke up and his beard was gone. As to say, he shaved it while he was knocked out. Yeah, man. Yeah. Just some OP stuff. And it's got some other crazy moments that if you've watched any sort of like comic book properties or anything, Batman, this is where they came from. When the criminals are like in the room, like children are making their plan, and out of nowhere, two hands just crash through a wall and grab someone and just pull them back in. That came from Dark Knight Returns. That's where that comes from. Batman just wrecking shop on people. Just crazy moments like that. You're like, this dude is like way out there somewhere. Just murking people at like this awesome way. It's just dope. And of course, the most famous part of The Dark Knight Returns, this isn't really a spoiler at this point because it was in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Very sketch film. But anyways, Batman versus Superman. That's the most famous part of the comic, and it's one of the best parts of the comic. But I wouldn't even say it's the best. This comic is like insane. You've got Batman versus the Mutant Leader, one of the best comic book fights of all time. Batman versus the Mutant Leader in the mud? I don't even want to spoil it. Change the way you think. Change your whole mentality. Just crazy. Yeah, man. This comic book is what made me... This was when I was 16 and I read my first comic when I was 7. But this comic consecrated my love for comic books. This comic consecrated my love for comic books. I was like, okay, this is what's up. Like, this is my vibe. Otherworldly. Also, it made Frank Miller my top comic book person of all time to this very day. Every single panel of artwork is on another level. The sparse, gritty style a la Sin City, which came out years later, actually. The colors, the swole Batman, like, it's just... Yeah, and Frank Miller's a unique artist. Like, no one out there is doing artwork like Frank Miller. Old school Daredevil, old school Wolverine. All these, like, this ain't no normal stuff. So, it's, the execution, 9-year perfect, like a 9.9 bar. My math people, y'all know what that means, but if you don't know math, look that up. 9.9 bar out of 10. Like, it's too good. Changed my life, honestly, if I'm gonna be honest. So yeah. Dark Knight Returns, it's the best Batman story. It's the best comic book ever written or ever produced. Until I found, quote unquote, better books, like, almost 20 years later, it was the best book I had ever read. It's just, you can't sleep on Dark Knight Returns. Again, it's gotten more awards than we can sit here and talk about right now. You can look it up and just see how amazing it is. It is the #1 comic book of all time, without question, to this very day. And I believe it came out back in 1986? And no comic came out that's better than Dark Knight Returns. Give me a break. Go pick that up immediately. If you're looking to get into comics, I would definitely say that is the place to start. I would say start with Dark Knight Returns. It has every element that makes a comic great. And just kind of branch out from there. But yeah, it's a necessary and a foundational #1, very deserving, appropriate at the highest level spot on my #1 list of comic books of all time. Okay, now before we wrap this up, we've got in this list I actually do have some honorable mention and a notable exemption in this particular list. Okay, the one necessary honorable mention on this list is Ultimates Volume 1. Okay, this was done by, the art was by Brian Hitch, who was the writer, Mark Miller, I believe. I'll look that up for y'all. Yeah, I had to struggle to not put this on the list. Ultimates Volume 1 is it's just one of like the tightest comics ever put to page. It's just tight. It is tight, just from top to bottom. The artwork, obviously, Brian Hitch, broke his foot off in that comic. It's just, every panel is a joy to look at. But here's the thing about the Ultimates. What people think of as the MCU is a large amount of it is drawn from the Ultimate Universe. Something that really only comic book readers know about. The lay audience or whatever has no clue about the Ultimate Universe. The 616, we know that's the Marvel Universe main one. Ultimate Universe was what, 1630? I'll look that up too. Yeah, it's just, this was a run of comics that came out from like early 2000s to, I think the 2010s is when they called it quits. But it started off with Ultimate Spider-Man, which is also a classic. But eventually they did their ultimate version of the Avengers. And there were a lot of comics in that series. But that Volume 1, which a friend of mine actually got for me for my 16th birthday, the hardback version. That wasn't cheap. Got that mug for me. That comic is like, bless you again, it represents everything that the Ultimate Universe was supposed to be. at the highest level. Y'all see me about to put it almost made it onto the top 10 comic books of all time. It's just too good. It's just dope. Everything about it. You got the different version of Iron Man with the slightly different suit, you know. Captain America jumping out of planes with no parachutes. You've got Giant Man. You got the Wasp. You've got a different version of Thor out there chilling with like the long straight hair, like out in the lane, just like posted up. And you've got arguably the standout part of the comics, and I think he was supposed to be one of my top 10 fictional characters of all time, no matter what, the ultimate version of the Hulk. The Hulk makes that comic. The Hulk in that comic is just on another level. It just makes it so exciting, so visceral. Captain America is a great part of it too. But that Hulk, hilarious, scary, very well drawn. Oh, man. Yeah, at this point, I don't want to get into spoilers because you need to read these comics. They're really good. And I want everything to be just as surprising for you as it was for me. But yeah, the implementation of the Hulk in Ultimates Volume 1 is just, again, 9 near perfect. It just sticks in my memory to this day. Bless you one more time. When I think of those characters, even to this moment, a lot of times I think of the Ultimate version. I know the 616, the main timeline, or the real version, but those Ultimate versions, oh man, yeah. Ultimates Volume 1, highly recommended. Hardback, paperback, don't care how you get it. Almost made it to the top 10 list, but the other comics, beside being excellent, they had like another element to them. Iconic. They revealed something that no one knew like forever, or they're just like outright historic, you know what I mean? So that's the top 10. But this is a necessary honorable mention, one of the best comic books of all time. And the one notable exemption, The Walking Dead. I've never read it. As you know, if you watch my channel, I'm not really into anything too scary, definitely not anything too gory, demons and all that stuff. I don't get down with that. Along that list is zombies. Just don't like zombies. Never have, more than likely never will. So I've never read The Walking Dead. But people say it is, not only is it good because of the TV adaptation, you know, obviously it's very well known. It's understood to be one of the best comics of all time, which is probably why they adapted it to a very long-running TV show. So yeah, I'm not just leaving it off here. I'm not unaware of it, but because of the emphasis on because of the presence of zombies, it's something I'd never read. But I wanted to give it a shout out because, you know, obviously it's good. You know, I'm not going to take that away from it, but it just doesn't make my list. And that's it. That is today's video. TDJ ranks top 10 comic books of all time. I recommend you go out and pick up all the top 10, including Ultimates Volume 1. But if you just got Batman Dark Knight Returns, that would be good too. Okay, check out my video on the top 10 films. I just did that a couple days ago. Films are pivotal to nerd culture, so, you know, we got to go over the top 10 movies as well. Just a necessary element to the whole nerd culture vibe. Check that video out. Black Panther came out relatively recently. 12 days ago? Yeah. Still a brand new film. Highly recommended. Check out my review. I can't tell you the rating here because that would be a spoiler, but you need to see that movie. Marvel's best film for sure. Black Panther. Lego. I love Lego. Lego, you know, beautiful, fundamental element of nerd culture. The last video I did was The Mandalorian Starfighter. Check that out. Great video. A lot of fun to do. I've got another great set coming up for y'all very soon, so stay tuned. And last but not least, My Hero Academia. My favorite thing running right now that's like actively running. Each episode is better than the last. Now it's starting to get a little scary, but the baseline quality of My Hero Academia is that it's just good. Actually, it's great. Check out my last review, get a Crunchyroll subscription, find a way to watch it, watch My Hero Academia immediately. Okay, and as I always say, because I genuinely mean it, I truly mean this, stay up. Stay up. You want to be this direction in life, not this direction. Stay up. And until I see y'all again, which will be very soon, of course, you know I love doing these videos. Got to keep y'all deep in the game in the Imaginist culture. Not the nerd culture, the Imaginist culture. And on that note, peace!